here's the more serious point. I put this quote up before from Barbara Belletti and Hervé Piguet. It's in a proposal that we're working on together to basically attempt to quantify and get a better handle on the health of the world's rivers, period. Before that proposal, though, there's already a number of studies that clearly establish rivers are the most impacted ecosystem worldwide. That's what we're dealing with, and freshwater resources are fundamental not just to terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem species survival, but also to ours. And so this is a fundamental problem that you are all involved in, and the scope of it is enormous. I'm putting up this as kind of a personal admission, I guess, of some of our goals on one of our way too many websites, buried in there somewhere. And I've got goals here that we kind of put up, I think, back in 2015, that by 2020 we'd do these things, and by 2025 we hope to have. And I'm not going to read all this. I'm just going to say that, you know, what we hoped to be able to do by now is promote adoption of low-tech PBR, mainly in Western states. I think it's spread beyond that, and it's really exciting because I think the approaches and the principles have much broader relevance. We have been directly involved in design and restoration. I put hundreds of miles back in 2015 and building more than 10,000 structures, and we haven't hit the mark there. We've ended up doing a lot more projects, and a lot of them are at the pilot in the early stages, and I think we're on our way there. But in terms of the things that this instruction team has been directly involved in, we've got a lot of work still to do. We've been trying to spread the adoption of as many new types of approaches. And so back to the idea of recipes, there's so many ways that you guys could innovate. We could all innovate together and come up with cool new recipes for doing some of this sort of work that engage process. So I look forward to learning those and discovering those with you. Yeah, by 2025, we said we want to, you know, do about an order of magnitude more. By 2020, we said we'd like to support agencies, councils, tribes to tackle hundreds of pilot projects and make the transition to full scale. This has happened. About half of it is documented on the website. If you guys sign up and get some free koozies, I think we're going to get we're going to show that we're there. And I'm just admitting, you know, this was sort of the vision and our goals from 2020, and I really appreciate all of you and your interest in helping us all achieve those goals together. On behalf of the entire instruction team, and the one really kind of bit of feedback that hit home, not in a good way, is gosh, we got to do something about this demographic crisis on the screen. Yes, a bunch of old white males. We can do better. We will next time. Sounds familiar, like our current politics. Anyway. But we do want to thank you for helping build and be that workforce. Remember that principle: there's strength in numbers, and it's exciting that these efforts are growing. I want to reinforce that there are more key processes than wood accumulation and beaver dam activity. I was just had the privilege of being up on a working field trip up in the Golden Trout Wilderness and the Sierras, and learning about maybe something along the orders of a key process being root mat production in these high mountain meadows that is important for, instead of forcing, you know, wood accumulation, beaver dam activity, this is these big meadows and holding them together and forcing spreading flow out. So there's other things that this community may discover, but that's important that in that example, you're focusing on the process of root mat production, not the noun of the root mat. We're focusing on the process of wood accumulation, the process of beaver dam activity, not the structures that are admittedly fun to build, okay? out of these efforts, you will, and we have had the privilege to build some genuine partnerships that will last lifetimes. This is an article that Jeremy mentioned in Beef Magazine in one of the earlier presentations that just came out this year that Brianna Randall put out. And it's on Jay Wild's story of restoring perennial flow to his creek using beaver. It is these partnerships across the non-sort of traditional kind of political partners you might imagine that are really, really important for us all. Another thing we haven't talked about, but it was hinted at in Nick's closing remarks and the question on funding adaptive management and monitoring. I'm going to have a little more flippant response. Let's get over it. The mantra that we can't afford to do monitoring is nonsense. In the next few years, we will put tools available in your hands where you have no excuse not to monitor. Repeat photo apps, these apps like Nick getting to the next generation. We will be winning when some of you are snobby enough not to use those dumbed down apps and you do your own thing. But my goal is to help make monitoring something that is so cheap that you have no excuse not to do it. In addition to that, there's some extremely exciting examples of creative financing out there that could actually scale restoration to the scope of the problem. As my friend Nick Wobrook from Blue Forest Conservation likes to say, with the massive disproportionate accumulation of wealth in the world right now comes a lot of guilt. And with just what makes smart business sense, and that is investing in resiliency to climate change, also comes a need to invest in things that will produce resiliency to our water resources. That's where what you guys are doing in. They already have these forest resiliency bonds, and we are working on getting watershed and riverscape resiliency bonds out there where we can front load the cost of hitting these things hard, big, and at scale. A pilot project can and will move from something that is on the order of tens of thousands of dollars to, under this model, potentially things that are on the $2 to $5 million range, so that you can scale up and tackle a massive watershed in the $50 to $100 million range. That is not pie in the sky, that is realistic, and there's a bunch of repaying back those bonds that could and is already potentially available through the Farm Bill. So, whoops, I think I've just opened up their website on accident. So do keep an eye out for some of that. Do remember the inspiration that Mark and Colin set for us, and Ben, that these systems that we're talking about were not anomalies. They were pervasive, and they aren't they aren't going to be the thing for everywhere, but hopefully the planning has helped you identify the sorts of places where some of these anastomosing type systems that provide a lot of that resilience as beads on a string in a broader riverscape network could be a tool for you. Jeremy did a really good job of just setting that high level, not the target there, but the vision of resiliency, and that's something that lots of different groups can rally behind, and something, and we encourage you to take and use what's going to work with your groups. Any of the messaging out of this, tweak it as you see fit, and use anything that you have found in these workshops helpful to reach your audiences. The Riverscape principles help you identify what makes a healthy ecosystem. We've beaten that healthy riverscape, we've beaten that one to death. The restoration principles should guide and could be there as a little bit of a litmus test. If you're really only doing low-tech PBR, are you adhering to these? If you're not, it's okay. There are situations where we can't, get to all these things, or hybrid approaches. But we want to be clear about what is and what isn't this low tech. We've also not said too much other than complaining about having to do the workshop virtually about the current situation. The current situation with COVID and with the economic crisis globally is extremely serious. If we look back through time, particularly in the US, going back to the Dust Bowl, maybe Timothy Egan's going to have to rewrite this book on the worst hard time that talks about the untold story of those who survived the Great American Dust Bowl. But what came out of the Dust Bowl and what humans can do when we rally together instead of fight each other is truly remarkable. The sponsor of this workshop, this was paid for by the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, Working Lands for Wildlife. That was the Soil Conservation Service. That came out of the Dust Bowl. What else came out of that? Almost every national park you go to that has beautiful overlooks, the Civilian Conservation Corps came out of that effort. Keep your eyes open for opportunities coming out of rebuilding from this financial crisis and this global pandemic. There's a lot that needs to be done in terms of riverscapes. There's also a lot that needs to be done in terms of putting people back to work and building communities around a shared cause and shared vision. And riverscape resilience is one of those things that could stand up to that. There's other crises that have taken a back seat. If you watch Sanjay Gupta's One Nation Under Stress, he talks about how stress is literally killing us. Chronic pain, chronic stress actually causes parts of our brain to shut off, and particularly the parts that deal with empathy. This is, instead of it being, opioids and suicide and obesity that are the things killing us, he's saying, collectively that those are just symptoms of too much stress. And what's really exciting from the sort of analogy standpoint is that these riverscapes under stress, they shut off too. They retract, they turn into these networks, much like the synapses in our brain, that are just focusing on the core essential functions for survival. However, we can, with low tech, turn back on parts of that network and make it healthier. And one of the things that's so exciting to me is if we can build a community that can address riverscape stress, if we can build a community that can make healthier riverscapes, those could also be communities that are helping rebuild, areas that are hit with economic hardships right now with COVID. Prior to it, economic hardships anyway. And the parts of the brain that shut down are actually restorable when there's a common goal, when there's a sense of community, etc. So that excites me. If you haven't already, read chapter 7. It's only 5 pages. It is a call to action. So yes, your riverscapes are calling you. You could choose whether to accept or decline that call. Some of the most important points in there are things I've already mentioned. Build the workforce, what we can do to innovate, not reinvent, not invent, but innovate, make it easier for everybody to do this sort of stuff. Share lessons and have the right expectation management around this. And ironically, there's, I think, a lot that can be done too in leveraging technology to do low tech. A few excerpts that I just want to highlight out of that as we close. We need to work smarter and more efficiently. There's just too much to do. So we can't keep doing the same stupid stuff and spending too much on too little. The key is working with an understanding of how healthy riverscapes function. And the reason for that is because the processes can scale well beyond our footprint. It's as simple as that. We will never get there building structures in every single mile of stream. We need to kick these things off and let them take over and spread. The de-emphasis of the structure itself is fundamental. And instead of dismissively setting aside the work that riverscapes themselves can play in shaping their own more resilient futures, we need an appreciation of what riverscapes can do for themselves. It requires us to step aside with some humility and recognize the role. So this picture here is in the manual, and I think I've showed it once before. Because I genuinely believe that the future for riverscapes and of this of your efforts are promising. I don't know if you can see it in the posture of this kid, but he's leaning on a shovel and he looks pretty proud. He's proud because he kicked off something there that allowed beaver that had been extirpated from that system for 30 years to get released there and stay. And there's a little bit of a chuckle, because I don't know if you can see in the blurry posts sticking up out of the water, but the structure that this kid helped build got drowned out. The beaver came downstream, built a dam twice as tall and drowned it out, said, "Nice try, kid, I got this." That's the sort of handoff that we need, both to future generations and to these natural systems. So remember these principles. We took 4 days to tell you this is what it takes to recognize a healthy system. And these are the things that you can do to help out, and then let it get to healthy and get out of the way when it does. This is our classic incomplete acknowledgement, but a lot of amazing people, amazing organizations, and that includes so many of you already. The rest could be, and you can inspire others to join this community. I had a question in a workshop once that's like, well, how do we do this? Well, tell your boss that this is your job. It's amazing how many bosses, if you can make them look good, will just get out of the way and let you also do that work. So with that, I will see if Jeremy has anything to add, and then I think we are going to close it out about 10 minutes early here.
Yeah, thanks for the inspiration, Joe. This has been a phenomenal workshop, and to all of our participants, I do want to build on one thing you said. It really struck home, and it's about this idea of inclusivity. This whole movement that we're talking about is about getting everyone engaged to treat the riverscapes at scales they need to be treated. We can't fulfill that goal if we're the only faces and voices of it. So as the father of 2 daughters, I want them to have every opportunity. I want the diversity of folks we have in this country to see themselves in this. And so please do reach out to us. We want to help empower you with the resources you need to go do this, and ultimately to tell the story about it. Nothing would please me more than just sit in the back of the room and have all of you out there as spokespeople for this. And everywhere I go, I get the privilege of traveling a bunch, and I see cool projects. There's always one individual who's what we call the spark plug in that community. They just get inspired and they can move mountains. And so I would just really challenge you to think, are you that person? Could you be that person? And just really thank you again from the bottom of my heart for participating. Hopefully we've helped you learn some things and get excited to get back out there in the field. And Joe, I will turn it back over to you. And thanks again to ASWM, all of our instructors. Everybody did a fantastic job. Thanks for your support.
Yeah, thank you. That was very well put, Jeremy. Marla, anything to add? And I do also want to just extend that thanks. You guys have been amazing behind the scenes, making all this run smoothly. We couldn't have done it without you.
Well, just a thank you from the Association of State Wetland Managers for including us in this effort. We're always happy to partner with you guys because you're doing such great work, and thank you for all of that you guys are doing and bringing us in.
Great. Well, everybody stay healthy, stay safe, and yeah, please reach out if you need anything or you have any questions, and good luck to you. All right, we'll close it there.